Hi, and welcome to CryptoBiography. I'm your host, Brandon Starr. This is episode 412 of CryptoBiography, and this is Mother's Day. So, first of all, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers. And yeah, I actually did want to talk about the mothers in my life, but let me give a little confession here. So, the episode I did last week about our Australia and New Zealand trip, that was actually done on the day we got back, and that was after 20 hours of travel and, a 16-hour time shift, something like a 16-hour time shift. And I did get a little bit of writing done this week, but mostly I was fighting jet lag. So while I did get some written, it wasn't enough to make up an entire episode. And so I decided last night, this is just not happening. And I knew that Mother's Day was coming. And I figured, you know what, this would be a good time to do an episode about the mothers in my life. So, all right. So first, I guess I'll talk about my mother. And she is a remarkable woman. So she just celebrated her 80th birthday. And we took her with us on she was with us on the Australia-New Zealand trip. And she's getting old enough that she's a little slower and so on. But, she was keeping up with us pretty darn well. Basically got to do, all the same things we did. There were very few times when she sort of got held back. She even swam a little bit when we were doing the snorkeling in at the reef. She even snorkeled just a little bit. She kind of quickly realized it was a bit much for her. But even that she partook in, and that was really fun. The whole trip was really amazing, and and it kind of made me realize how long it's been since I've because we've been on these trips with her, but it's been a while since I've been able to actually live with her. I haven't lived with her since college, so and even then it was because I went to college out of state. I was only during summer breaks and so on that I was still living with her. Basically, right after college, moved down to Sacramento and ended up moved with my future wife. And my mom did a great job. It's hard to get into these details without just sounding just kind of highly personal and a little, a little closed off, so to speak. In other words, like, everyone thinks their own mother is wonderful, and so I get that. A couple of things that my mom did, and I think I mentioned this when I talked about my father as well, is that they managed to break sort of like the history of some abuse. I think it was a little less severe from her parents than it was from my dad's parents, but still, they came from the period of time when people hit their kids, and when sort of casual sort of violence towards children was completely accepted and even encouraged, and of course it still is in some circles. But she and my dad were the ones who managed to break that. I was spanked once, then they decided that was it, and then they just would not raise a hand to either myself or my sister after that, and I appreciate that. I think it really does help someone who hasn't had sort of like a long history with being hit by the people who are supposed to protect and aid them in becoming an adult. So, but it wasn't just myself that she helped. She was also the head librarian of first the Hayden branch of the public library system in North Idaho, and eventually she and her sort of co-helper, created the North Idaho library system. And basically, if you've ever used any of the libraries in North Idaho, except ironically the Coeur d'Alene one, which is Coeur d'Alene is like the biggest city in North Idaho, but because they're the biggest, they refused to join. It was like a pride thing, I guess. Whatever. Anyway, all the other libraries in North Idaho are all banded together. They share resources. They were very early to add, for example, movies. They were doing it back in the sort of the VCR days, and then they did, especially though once it came to like DVDs, they were very in on that. They were some of the earliest libraries to make internet available. They've done that for years. And so they really look out for their people. Another way they've looked out for their people was when they set up their library loan system. They didn't just get one off the shelf. They had one sort of made for them, and it's specifically designed not to keep records, not to keep long-term records. It has a record of whatever book is checked out at that moment by that person, because they need to keep track of their books. Once the book is checked back in, it is marked as checked back in, and there is zero record of the books that the people have checked out. And that is to protect against abuse by authorities. This is back in the 80s, and she saw that there was the potential for abuse. Increasingly, FBI and local law enforcement were looking at people's personal records, going on fishing expeditions and so on. And she decided her library system was not going to be part of it, and she made sure that it was part of it, and I really admire her for that. She's, and that sort of helped guide me a little bit too, in terms of like the sort of things that I believe in and still do, even though, and I've talked about my politics before as well, and they've changed since I've actually talked about them to a fair degree. And I should probably do another one at some point. But some of the things that I've always held on to include that sort of lesson that I learned from her, and from how they just sort of made sure that their patrons were protected. So happy Mother's Day to my mom. Happy Mother's Day to my sister and her wife. They are wonderful mothers. And my nephew's a really good kid. He, they're just doing a bang-up job. He's very active. He does a lot of, he's involved in all kinds of activities. He's done plays, but he's also active in multiple sports. He gets good grades. He's like everything you could want in a young kid like that. He's just stretching his legs, and I have no doubt that he's going to be an amazing adult when he, in just a few years now. He's practically a teenager, and so happy Mother's Day to them, and happy Mother's Day to my wife. And it's funny because, and she probably won't hear this because she just doesn't listen to the podcast, but that's okay. She's very self-effacing. Like I don't think she would actually agree that she's a particularly good mother, which sounds weird, but she is. She's had a lot to struggle with, and just like everyone does, and more than some. And and her kids, are both, good people. They're turning out to be good people, and that, they struggle too. Everyone has their struggles. That's not the issue. The thing is that she really loves them and really does her best with them, and it shows. And even my son now also calls her mom, which is really sweet. And I didn't know if that would happen because, like, when we met, he was practically an adult. When we married, he already was an adult, and that's, a few years ago now. When kids are already adults, you don't necessarily think that they will start to call the other, the step parent as mother or as father. But it has happened, and she's done really well by my son as well. And she's just a loving person who gives herself, I think, too hard of a time sometimes. Yeah. And I'll leave there's other mothers I could mention, like Declan's grandmothers, and they're good people too, but I think I'm going to have to leave it there. I think I'll leave it with, sort of like the mothers who are, with those mothers there. There's, hopefully your Mother's Day is going well. It's strange to be at this age where, my mom is getting old enough that, I even if everything goes well, I mean, she's already over 80, and I've already, of course, lost my father, and it's just it feels strange to sort of be at this time where, that the time it has to be limited just because of age. And so make sure to tell your mom that you love her. And I already have, but I will again later today. And happy Mother's Day.